You doing good today? Hello, balcony people. I feel like I needed to be a little louder and make sure y'all knew I was here today. Hi, balcony people. I love you. All right. Hey, is there a football game today? Does anyone care at all? All right. Are we watching for the commercials? Yeah? Yeah. By the way, there's going to be two commercials that I hope you'll pay attention to. One in the end of the first half, one at the beginning of the second half. There's a national campaign called He Gets Us, and it's literally the largest marketing campaign ever done by believers. They've raised almost $1 billion for this campaign, not just for the Super Bowl. There's a bunch to it, and so that's actually going to be our next series. Is going to be called He Gets Us, and I'm really excited about that. So these two that you'll see today, they've never been seen before. They're brand new, being premiered at the Super Bowl, and so I will be watching. I don't give a rip. I don't even know who's playing. Tell me who's playing. Chiefs and Eagles are playing. So I literally didn't know, but I'm ready for the commercials, all right? So, hey, also, Pastor Tyler talked to ladies to you about the IF conference. Lisa is really excited about that. Last year, that was a phenomenal event for our ladies, and I want to encourage you ladies to make this a priority. It is just going to be a phenomenal time, and we did this for the men, and I realized we had not done it for the ladies, and so I want to do this. We never want finances to be the reason that you don't get to participate in any of our events. And so we have some scholarships available. And so ladies, if you've been hearing about IF and maybe you're thinking, I'd love to come, I'm just not in a place where I can afford it right now, please come let any of our team know. We'll scholarship you. We'll help you. We'll make that happen. It's that important to us that we don't want that to be the reason that you're not there. And so I hope that you will do that. And we would love to help you to get there. We're talking about prayer. Today's our last sermon in the series called Pray First. And on your way in, you should have received one of these prayer cards. And if we missed you somehow, if right now, I want to get in your hands now. We're going to do something at the end. So if we missed you, if you didn't get one of these, would you wave your hand in the air? And our team is looking for you. There's a few. They're going to come to you. They're going to bring you one of these. I'm just telling you, you're going to want one of these. I'm so excited about where we're going today with this message and how we're gonna end with these cards. And so just keep your hands in the air, and we will get those to you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you to our team who's helping make that happen. We're talking about prayer. Would it be all right if I told you a joke about prayer? Would that be okay? They're getting less convincing every Sunday, Jace. I'm discouraged right now. All right, I'm going to tell you a joke, Jace. So there's a pastor who he gave an altar call and said, hey, if you need prayer, come down. And so people came down, and one gentleman went to him and said, Pastor, would you pray for me? I want you to pray for my hearing. And the pastor, full of faith, got really excited, just laid his hands on the man's ears and began to pray. Just powerful prayer. Just believing that the man's hearing would be healed. And when he ended, he looked at the man, and the pastor just felt so encouraged and I'm sure God answered that powerful prayer. And he said, sir, how is your hearing now? And he said, I don't know, Pastor. My hearing's not until Tuesday. That went better than last week's. All right. Good. So we've been... That was from Jace, just so you know. He gave me that one this week. We've been talking about prayer, and I really am excited for what I believe that God is going to do today. I'm very, very excited. Let me ask you a question that I hope, I believe will increase your faith, okay? If you're in the room today and you'd say, Pastor, in some point in my life, I have prayed a prayer, and I know that God answered that prayer. Can I just see your hand real quick? See your hand? Keep it up for just a minute. Now look around. Everyone look around. All right, you can put your hands down. So I'm hoping that this increases your faith for two reasons. Number one is that you just looked across a room that was full of hands lifted saying God has answered at least one. Probably for many of you, it's been more than one. But God has answered a prayer. And for some of you, in that moment, you had to pause and reflect and remember what God has done in your life. And in doing that, I just wanted right on the outset this morning to begin to increase your faith. And some of you might just be in a season of your life where like, Pastor, I just don't know if I have enough faith today. And I was reminded this week of this little story in Luke chapter 17 where the disciples come to Jesus and they literally ask, they say, how do we increase our faith? And the response of Jesus is, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed. How many of you have heard this one before? And I don't know if you know, but mustard seeds are really, really tiny. If I held one here this morning, it'd be like the size of the tip of your pen. You wouldn't be able to see it from where you're sitting. And Jesus said, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. And I thought of that because of the idea in this little passage about a seed. And I started thinking this week about what happens to a seed when it's nurtured. When you care for that seed, you put it in the ground and you protect the seed, and you pull the weeds and you water the seed and you care for it. And what happens when you nurture the seed is that it grows. And I believe that that's what's been happening in this series as we kind of on the front end of the year, we said we're gonna take a fresh commitment to pray first, right? In fact, the whole first message was about first and how first things matter. And we said, you know what? Prayer's not going to be our last option. It's going to be our first opportunity, right? And so we recommitted. And what I've been hearing from you is how your prayer life is growing and how you've been encouraged and you've set some new habits and created some new routines. And so I thought of this verse. I thought, what's happening is you planted a seed and you've been nurturing that seed, and that seed is growing. And I'm just so excited about what God's doing in your life and what he's going to do specifically today. So we're going to do something that we do every week. We're going to just take a moment and we're going to pray a quick prayer. It takes us about 20 seconds. And my ask of you is this: will you, when we say this prayer, will you personally ask the Lord to speak to you today through his word about, and just give him permission. God, whatever, you know what I need in my life. Whatever you want to do in my life today, I'm just opening my heart to you, and will you talk to me today? How many of you will pray that prayer? Will you pray that prayer? And can I say this, and then we're going to pray. Did y'all see in the news this week about the revival happening on Asbury campus? Did y'all see that? It's incredible. To be fair, I hadn't heard it. I don't pay much attention I'm not on social media. I don't watch the news very often. My dad called me last night, and he told me, so I went on, I Googled, I've been reading about it last night and this morning, and just in their chapel, they went to chapel on Wednesday morning, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, they haven't left. It's incredible, and I don't know. I just felt like I should say that to you because there's a lot of bad news out there, and there's balloons being shot down everywhere. Did you notice that? I mean, it's just a crazy week. But here's what I want you to focus on. God is moving. There's a revival happening. And so my prayer since last night when I found out was, God, if you can do it in Asbury, we're another city that starts with an A. You could do it in Albuquerque, right? And I don't know about you, but I'm ready for God to move in our city. Are you ready for that? All right, so we might need 30 seconds to pray instead of 20 because we're going to ask God to do something in Albuquerque. Is that all right? All right, let's pray. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. It's powerful. It's effective. We trust it. And so we just pause because we don't want to take lightly this moment where we open your word. And so we open your word and we open our hearts and we ask you to talk to us today. We ask you whatever we need in our lives, will you speak to us today? We make ourselves available. And Lord, just like you're doing in Asbury and probably in a lot of other places around the world, we're believing you for a move of God that's so unique, that's so needed, that's so powerful here in our city. God, we need you, and we're asking you today to come in a powerful way in Jesus' name. And everyone said, Amen. I've tried really hard in this series to simplify prayer. I hope that it's been helpful to you. I've tried to give you a lot of tools, and today I want to do that just one last time. Today I want to talk to you about 3 directions of prayer, okay? And then I'm going to talk to you about 3 principles of prayer. So kind of 2 sets of 3, okay? And I'm hoping this will just one more time really simplify prayer, because I've been saying this, but we often in church we say how important prayer is, but maybe sometimes we fail to equip you actually know how to just do that in your daily life. And so we're trying to help you with that. So quickly, 3 directions of prayer. The first one is this: prayer should be upward. Okay, prayer should be upward. This has to do with turning your heart towards the Lord, with being thankful, and really, I just say it this way, with recognizing God's activity in your life. If you study how Jesus prayed, you notice that he often taught us through his prayers about worship and gratitude. Those are upward prayers, right? And Jesus taught us this way. He taught us in what's called the Lord's Prayer. If you remember in that, he says, "Hallowed be your name," or "Holy is your name." That's right at the beginning of the prayer. Is Jesus himself is modeling. He's saying, hey, at the front end of this, I want to turn my heart upward. I want to look to my Father. I want to position myself to be grateful and to recognize his activity here on the earth. It's interesting because one of the big miracles that Jesus did is called the feeding of the 5,000. There's a big crowd, and they've been listening to Jesus all day, and they're getting hungry, and there's nowhere to eat. There's no restaurants. They didn't have Uber Eats yet. They didn't, and so Jesus says, "Find me some food." And they found him a boiled little sack lunch, and then, and if you remember this, Jesus, he prays over that little sack lunch. And the outset of that prayer is that he expresses gratitude for what has been provided, and he asks his Father to multiply it. And I'll just give you one more example. There's a friend of Jesus named Lazarus, and Lazarus dies, and they come and they get Jesus, and Jesus shows up, and they've already put Lazarus in the grave, and if you remember this story, they're kind of mad at Jesus, like, "You should have come sooner." Have you ever felt that way? I know I have. "You should have come sooner, Jesus." And Jesus prays, and I'll just read it to you. John chapter 11, verse 41 says, "So they took away the stone, and Lazarus' body's in there, and Jesus looks up to the Father, and he says, 'I thank you,'" there it is, upward, gratitude, "'I thank you that you have heard me.'" And as I just kind of quickly think through those examples of Jesus, I notice that in these upward prayers, that at the end of them, there's multiplication and there's resurrection. And I know that we all want multiplication and resurrection, but I just want to point out to you that it starts with this upward, grateful, thankful, heart at the outset of the prayer. And I found myself asking, just in my own life, and maybe it applies to you, but I found myself this week asking, could it be that I'm missing the multiplication and the resurrection moments that my heart so desires because I'm sometimes ungrateful? Would any of you be willing to admit sometimes you're ungrateful? It's like we get entitled, and we think we should have more and deserve more, and we should get more, and so I've just been thinking that way. And the girls and I, we just yesterday we had several blessings, just kind of out of nowhere, just things that someone just blessed us, and over lunch we were just talking and talking about how fun it is to follow Jesus, and how when you do, he doesn't just take care of you, but so often he just blesses you in these unexpected ways. And it was fun for me this week to just turn my heart upward. So prayer should be upward. The second direction is that prayer should be inward. Okay, prayer should be inward, and really we're going to end up focusing on this one quite a bit today. This is just where through our prayer, we allow God to work inside of us. This is where we get revelation. This is where the conviction happens. This is where we get wisdom. This is where we have creativity that doesn't come from us, but it comes from the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives. We let God work in us through our prayers. Here's what I'm saying, is that if all your prayers are only one direction, right, and I'm only giving you 2 right now, then you're missing out on something. And the one that we probably dislike the most is this one, is the moment where, can I just be honest, it hurts. It hurts when God begins to convict you. It's painful. I don't like it very much, right? And so we tend to avoid the things that bring us, that hurt. And so I just want to encourage you to press in to this part of your prayer life and to allow the Lord to work in you. In Luke chapter 18, we see a story where Jesus tells us about two different men who pray. And the first one prayed like this. He was a religious guy. He was a Pharisee. That was a group of super religious people in Jesus' day. And it says the Pharisee stood by himself and he prayed. Here's his prayer. I'll just read it to you. God, I thank you that I am not like other people. And he starts naming them. The robbers. He kind of shakes his head in disdain, right? The evildoers, those adulterers. God, I'm so thankful. And I'm not like, and he points this one guy out, this tax collector, right? Do you hear the tone in it? He's just pointing on. God, I'm thankful I'm not like those. And then he points out how amazing he is. And he says, God, I don't know if you know this or not. I fast twice a week, right? And can you imagine God up in heaven like, oh, good for you. Yeah. And I tithe, a tenth of all that I get, right? I mean, this is his prayer. And then we're told about the prayer of the second man, who's the tax collector that the religious guy pointed out. And that's an important detail because tax collectors, especially in their day, I mean, we still don't like paying taxes, but especially in their day, the tax collectors were on the wrong team, okay? They were supposed to be your friend, but they'd align themselves with the government, and they would come and they'd increase the tax so they could pocket a little bit, and everyone knew it. So nobody liked tax collectors. And Jesus says, here's the other prayer. It's a tax collector, and it says, the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast, and he said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And the prayer that Jesus applauds in this story is the second prayer, which I'll just point out as a prayer where he's asking God to work inside of him. We don't know exactly what happened, but there's some conviction in the tax collector's life, and he recognizes the activity of God, and he's surrendering his heart to God. He's letting God work inside of him. So prayer needs to be upward, prayer needs to be inward, and here's the third direction, prayer needs to be outward. When we spend time in God's presence, one of the things that should happen is that we recognize the blessing of God in our lives so that we can then in turn be a blessing to those that are around us. That's one of the things that should be a natural byproduct of spending time in the presence of God is like we get our cup filled up, right? So that we can then go and that we can pour out and we can be a blessing to others, which by the way is why it's so important to make this a regular habit. Right? You need to be filled up daily because you're giving out daily. That's what I'm telling you. If you don't have anything to give out, it's because you got to go back to the source and get filled back up. And this is what happens in outward prayers. You're spending time in his presence. You've been thankful. You've been grateful. God's worked in you. And then he begins to show you people around you that need his love. He begins to show you people around you that need the skill set that you bring. He shows you people who need hope. I mean, we see it in the story of Zacchaeus. If you remember this story, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. Do you remember that song? That's not the Bible story. That's the song in kids' church. And Jesus is coming to town, and he wants to go see Jesus. And so, but he's short. And so he goes and he climbs up in a tree, and he sees Jesus comes to him and says, Zacchaeus, come out of that tree, man. I want to go hang out with you at your house. Let's go and let's have dinner, right? And so they do that, and watch what happens. When Zacchaeus encounters Jesus, this is what he says in Luke chapter 19. He says, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. I love this example because as Zacchaeus encounters Jesus, the byproduct is to turn outward. I'm gonna be generous. Tyler said, I'm gonna live with open hands, right? I'm gonna give. I'm gonna serve. I'm gonna love. I'm gonna be part of the answer in my community. And so I just wanted to quickly give you these three directions. Prayer should be upward and inward and outward. And then I want to give you three principles of prayer. And we find these out of Matthew chapter 7, verse 7 through 11. It says this, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So 3 principles of prayer. We see 3 words that I just want to point out in this passage in Matthew. And the first one is this. It's the word ask. It says, ask and it will be given to you. The principle for prayer in this one word, ask, is that it's a principle of expectation. Probably the best way for me to see this is to think of especially a young child asking their parent for something. How many of you have young children and they ask you for things like 100 times a day, right? Do you remember that phase? Some of you, your kids are a little bit older, just remember that, okay? They come and they ask you for things, and what I've noticed in kids asking is that there's an expectation that you are going to say yes. Right, that you are going to give them the wildest desires of their heart, which in that moment is a donut, right? And they come and they're asking. But by the way, in parenting, there's just a few responses, right? There's yes, there's no, there's maybe, which maybe is just a delayed no, okay? Kids don't know that yet. You're just trying to be nice. Maybe, but you're going to tell them no. We all know that, okay? And then my favorite response, I'll just teach you. My favorite response is, I'll pray about it, okay? And that also is typically a no in disguise, but it sounds really spiritual. And so, yeah, I still use that one with my teenagers. I'm like, I'll pray about that one, right? Kids ask with such expectation. And what I don't know how to do it, but I want to infuse into you today is a childlike expectation as you go to the Lord in prayer, as you go to him to ask, to talk to him, to invite him into your life. Is I want to encourage you to ask, but not just like, God, can you do this? But to ask with expectation. Like, God, I know you can do this. I am believing that I want you to ask with expectation. Mark chapter 10, verse 15, there's a story where the people are actually bringing kids to Jesus, and there's so much happening. The disciples actually try to stop that from happening, and Jesus kind of puts them all, the disciples in their place. And then he says this, he says, truly, I tell you, anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it. That's a powerful statement by Jesus. He's helping us because the bottom line is this, is we can learn a lot about faith by observing children. And we can learn a lot about prayer by observing this one part, this expectation that kids have when they ask. And I just have a rhetorical question for you to kind of ponder today, and it's just simply this. It's, what is stopping you from asking God today? What is stopping you from just asking? What does it hurt to ask, right? That's the bottom line of a kid's ask is like, what does it hurt to ask, right? What's the worst they're going to say is no. So they ask, and we'll see it in a little bit. But there's also a persistency often in kids that is they'll ask and they'll keep asking, and they'll keep asking. So James chapter 4 verse 2 spells this out clearly. It says this. It says, "You do not have because you do not ask God." That's pretty simple, right? You do not have because you do not ask God. Here's the second principle. So the first is ask. It's a principle of expectation. The second one is seek. We saw that in the verse. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. And this is the principle of effort. Everyone say effort. Principle of effort, okay? What I'm telling you is, you're going to have to put some effort, okay? Some effort into your prayer. If your child is, again, it's easy to understand with a child. If your child is not near you and they decide they want to ask you something, then they have to seek you out, okay? So if we're in the house and I'm in one side of the house and they're on the other side of the house and suddenly the child decides, I need to ask my dad something, they're going to have to seek me out. And usually, I don't know how your kids do it, but usually it starts with, Dad, Dad, Dad. Does this happen in your house? And I'm in the other room, I'm like, over here. But here's the deal. I most often do not stop what I'm doing to go and find them. I actually expect them to stop what they're doing and to come find me. Are you following me? Now if they're hurt, that's a different, dad cry, okay? I'm not being a mean parent here, just so you know, okay? I don't want you mad at me and throwing rocks and all that, okay? So they have to find me. They have to seek me out. So if I'm in the room, I hear them, I respond, and now they're seeking. They're coming. They're finding me. There's some effort involved. They're going to have to come and to find me. Okay, and what all the seeking is you start at one level. And it escalates, right? You keep kind of stepping up the seeking just a little more at a time. And I just wanted to tell you that there's some seeking involved in prayer, okay? It's not just asking, but there's also some seeking. And I'm here to tell you that in prayer, that there are times when you're going to have to seek God out or to get his attention, right? To get his attention. We see this in lots of passages in the Bible. And I want to encourage you today that God absolutely wants to come through for you, but first, he wants you to come after him. Like he loves it when you pursue him. He loves it when you come after him. And the problem is this, is that if we find something else that becomes the solution to our problem, then that thing, whatever it is that happened to become the solution, that thing then gets our heart and then it gets our worship. So there's some seeking involved. It's like, God, I asked you once, but I'm asking you again. Oh, God, here I am again on day 3. I'm seeking you. I'm spending time here. I'm listening. I'm paying attention. God, I'm asking again. God, I'm asking again. God, here I am again. God, here I am again. You know, there's this age-old question. You've probably heard it. Maybe you've asked it. And it goes something like this. Well, why do bad things happen to good people? Have you ever asked that? Have you ever pondered that? Why do good things happen or bad things happen to good people? I almost reversed that. And we first have to settle that there's actually no such thing as good people. Scriptures are pretty clear that all have fallen short of the glory of God. So there's actually no such thing as good people. But also, I believe that sometimes God allows us to go through difficult times so that we will seek him out. Like, I'm just telling you, like there are times where God just wants us to seek him, to come after him. I'll say it this way. Hard times will quickly filter out what's not important. I mean, something will seem important when life is dandy, right? But as soon as life gets hard, you filter out all the unimportant things and you begin to realize the core. These are the most important things in my life. And what pleases the Lord so much in those times is when you remember in that core moment the seeking. God, you are the most important. Like David said in the Psalms, my soul pants for you like a deer pants for the water. There's this seeking. I'm coming after you. And I'll just be honest, this concept of seeking, it's a little bit hard for American Christianity to understand because there's some ideas in American church today that quite frankly just are not biblical. They're just not. So it complicates this conversation. There's a belief system right now that's titled moralistic therapeutic deism. I discovered this recently, and I was just doing just a little bit of kind of light reading on this. Let me just tell you about it, okay? Because this is prevalent in our culture today. Moralistic therapeutic deism. It believes 5 things, okay? Number 1, it believes that a God exists who created and ordered the world and watches over human life on earth, okay? Good so far. Number 2, God wants people to be good, nice, and fair to each other as taught in the Bible, and then they add, and by most other world religions. Okay, so we're like, we're starting to veer off track just a little bit here. Number 3, the central goal of life, according to moralistic, therapeutic deism, is to be happy and to feel good about one's self. We're way off track here. I'm just warning you. Number 4, belief system. God does not need to be particularly involved in one's life, except when God is needed to resolve a problem. In other words, God, I only want you here when I need you. But the rest of the time, I'm just going to go live my happy life, right? And number 5, belief system in this, good people, which there's not any, go to heaven when they die. This has become a common belief system, not just in America, but in America church. And I just want to tell you today that what I just read to you is unbiblical. That's not what the gospel says. In fact, I'm just going to take one piece. We don't have time to dissect all of that, but I'm just going to take one piece, and it's this idea that the central goal of life is to be happy and to feel good about yourself. And I just want to tell you that what Jesus actually promised in John 16:33 was this. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. I mean, I'm just telling you, that verse would not be in the Bible if Jesus' whole goal was for you to have a happy-go-lucky life. In fact, Jesus promised that there are going to be painful episodes in your life. But he also promised, here's the good news, that he would love to carry that pain for you. Because when when God carries your pain, he and he alone gets your worship. That's what he's after. This is the seeking, right? He's after your heart. He's after your heart. Listen, in those painful times of your life, and we all have them, God is brokenhearted with you. He didn't create that pain so he could laugh at your misery. He comes alongside and he says, I'm sorry that you're living in a broken world that's going to have pain, but if you'll let me, I'll come alongside of you and I'll go through this pain with you. And as that happens, he begins to get your worship. Exodus chapter 20 talks about the 10 Commandments, and it says this. It says, I, the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. And then it continues. He says, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven or on or above the earth or between the waters. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord, am a jealous God. That word, jealous God. I'm a jealous God. He desires your attention. I'm telling you, he wants you to seek after him. There's kind of 2 extremes here. Hyper faith means I don't have to do anything. God will take care of it all. And hyper independence says I don't have to ask God because I can take care of it all. And both of those extremes are wrong, because I'm just telling you that he's delighted in your seeking, By the way, seeking it requires effort. It's active. And I just want to point out to you that prayer is anything but passive. It's anything but. We sometimes think, well, I'll try this and this and this, and then I'll pray. And I'm just telling you, the number one thing we should do is to pray. Prayer is active. Prayer is not just sitting back and hoping that something happens. Prayer is active. So we have an ask, that's the expectation. We have the seeking, that's the effort. And then here's the third one today, and it's this principle, it's knock. He said, ask, seek, and knock. And knocking, the principle here is the principle of endurance. Okay, the principle of endurance. Now, I tend to gravitate this direction. I've always been kind of wired more towards endurance, right? Like in high school, I wasn't a sprinter. I was on the cross-country team. The longer, the better for me. Like, I might not be able to be faster than you, but I can run longer than you, so I'm going to win in the end. A tortoise and the hare kind of a deal. And this is a principle that we see in prayer, in ask, seek, and knock. Okay, knock. The idea here is not a polite little knock. It's do whatever needs to be done to get the other person's attention. That's what's happening. So just for our camera people, because they love when I move around the stage, I'm going to come over here to this door, okay? So ask, seek, and knock. Hello. It's kind of how we pray sometimes, right? Hello, Lord. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm out here. We don't know if he's heard us. We don't know what's happening. And some of you get a little more aggressive. Like, hey, Lord, I don't know if you heard me. I'm out here, right? Knocking's about endurance. They don't open the door. So, I mean, just imagine. You desperately need something from your neighbor. And you go. You wouldn't go, hello. Right? You wouldn't start there. You'd escalate it, right? You start knocking, right? And if it's truly urgent, you're like, hey, hello. Are you following me? This is exactly what's. I should have warned security. They're probably out there. Glad I didn't go to that door. This is exactly what the scripture says when it says, ask, seek, knock. It's not a polite little knock. It's an attention getter. It's, I'm not going away until you open the door. I will break this door down. I am getting my friends, right? I'm getting in my truck and I'm driving through the door, right? Like that's, you're following? Like, I'm just telling you, that's what the teaching is in this. It's about endurance. It's about not giving up. It's knock and keep knocking. Luke chapter 11, the disciples ask Jesus to teach them how to pray. He teaches what we know as the Lord's Prayer, and then he teaches this story. If you were here last week, I read this briefly at the end when we came to the altar, so you get to hear it twice. Luke chapter 11, Jesus said to them, suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. Bless you. A friend of mine on a journey has come to me and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the one inside answers, hey, don't bother me. The door's already locked and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up to give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of friendship, watch this, but because of your shameless audacity. I like that pairing of words. Shameless audacity, endurance. I'm not going to give up. I can't believe you showed up at midnight knocking on my door, right? That's the shameless audacity. He will get up and give you as much as needed. So I say, Jesus says. So he tells that story. And so then he says, here's a lesson. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be opened. I'm just telling you, some of your prayers will not be answered the first time. Some of your prayers will require endurance. Some of them will require you to pray over and over and over. And I'll just let you in on a secret that when you're praying, God is working, but he's mostly working in you. Sometimes that's why it takes so long, is that God has so much to work in us that if he answered the prayer, the work he wants to do in us wouldn't be accomplished. And that's what he cares the most about, is what's happening in you, in your heart. Some of your prayers are just going to require endurance. Will you get these prayer cards back out? So some of you have already written on these. Some of you haven't. It's okay. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you to write on this. We made it real simple. My prayer is, what are you praying about? I'd love for you to choose one or two of your top prayer requests in your life right now and to write it on this card. Some of you will remember we actually did this last Easter Sunday. How many of you remember we did this the same thing last Easter Sunday? Would it be all right if I told you a story from last Easter? So last Easter, we passed out prayer cards. They looked kind of similar to this. And we asked you, what's your number one prayer need? And you wrote it on there. And at the end, on Easter Sunday, because we were banking on the promise that the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead now lives inside of you, because that was Easter Sunday. And we said, we're going to believe that promise would be applied to whatever you write on your card. And at the end, so spoiler alert, because this is where we're headed today. At the end, I said, hey, everyone that would like to participate in this and believe that the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead now can be applied to your need, I'm going to ask you to come and just place it on the altar. And so pretty much everyone came, and all across the altar was just the cards were just laid out all across the altar, and we prayed together. Do y'all remember this? And that week, we took them. I took the cards. I went through every single one, just by myself, and I prayed over them. And as I did, I put them in different stacks. I kind of categorized them and found, okay, there's 4 or 5 praying this, and there's 4 or 5 praying this. And then that week in staff meeting, I shared that with the staff, and we took time, and we prayed over every single card. And by the way, your name's not, I'm not asking for your name on here, and we didn't in Easter either. So we were in my office just praying. We didn't know who we were praying for, but we knew the need that we were praying for. We did that. We prayed over that. And let me just show you. We have a clip from the Sunday following Easter when I just kind of reported back to the church that we had been praying over these, and I give you a little bit of an update on what we were praying for. So let me just show you this. It's just about a minute long. So this is the Sunday after Easter. Check this out. Come in here day after day, and I've just shuffled through the cards, and I don't know who I'm praying for, but I've just come in here and I've just said, Lord, I'm praying, Lord, for the person that needs healing right now, and I pray that the same power that raised Christ from the dead would be applied right now to this person. What I'm praying right now, you see what I'm saying? I just went through these one after the other and just prayed over and prayed over. By the way, there were a couple of things that kind of rose to the surface as I went through these needs. And I share this with you because I think you need to know that if you wrote whatever you wrote on there, you're not alone. That's what I want you to know. There were a couple of common themes. There were 4 things that I saw repeatedly as I went through them. There were multiple people who asked for prayer over their finances. Multiple people who prayed over their marriage. Multiple people that prayed for some type of a healing. And then there were multiple people that are praying for the ability to have a child. Which that one, I just want to clarify that I've now done my part, but you have to do yours, okay? But I am planning some January baby showers, okay? So y'all just get ready, all right? It's coming, all right? Y'all know what that means, right? I'll do my part, you do yours. Okay, I'm not going to preach that sermon today. So I showed you that because I want you to see one of the miracles that happened as one family didn't just write on a card, but exercised some faith and said, you know what? God, I'm going to ask, I'm going to seek, I'm going to knock, I'm going to keep knocking. I'm going to keep asking. I'm going to keep seeking. I'm going to keep knocking. And God, I believe that there's nothing in this world that you can't do. Do you want to see the rest of this story? Check this out.
Hi, my name is Casey.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth.
And this is our story.
Yeah, this is our story. 5 or 6 years ago, we started coming here, and our friends went to Harvest, and we were kind of looking for a new church, trying to find a home. And we went to a couple, and our friend said, come try our church. So we came and sat through the service, and then after service, Pastor Jason actually came up to us. We told you that he was a police officer, and you were like, no way. I've been praying for police officers to come to this church and to be a part of our Harvest family, and here you are. We decided that we wanted to try for another child. And that was back in 2020. In September, it had been about a year of trying, September 2021, we went to the doctor and we were like, hey, we're having a hard time. Like, this isn't working out. Like, what's our next step? And she's like, well, you have to go get some work done. And so I went and I got an ultrasound, and they told me that I had something called endometriosis in December of that year. We then started seeing a fertility specialist in January. I think we waited until the year was over. And we started going there and learning about that process and how expensive it is.
We went over that for a couple months.
Yeah, we did.
We were saying if we could budget it, we were seeing if we could afford it.
How
and then
back.
I think we just landed on, let's just pray and hope that things work out without having to do any of that.
April came around in church, and you offered the prayer cards. And you said, what do you need in your life? What do you need? What can God do for you? And I wrote down that I wanted to increase my family. I'd been praying every Sunday, really hard for this. And so I was like, it's a no-brainer. This is what I want. And I placed it up on the altar. And on May 15th, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And then I took 3 more pregnancy tests because I didn't believe
you took
it.
More than that.
Yeah, in the days to come, I took quite a few more than that.
So then the doctors had to start talking to us about induction towards the end there because she was getting so big.
Yeah, they're like, we might do a C-section, we'll possibly do an induction. Like, what are you comfortable with? And I was like, hold on. Let me ask God. I don't know. Like, He's helped us this whole thing. Like, we can't make that decision on our own. Like, we need some time. Like, let us get there with that. And so we get to the hospital on the 20th, and we're not in labor. And
we went to the breakfast that morning, and we'd heard.
We did. We went to Ironwood.
We'd heard some stories about induction. And how it's 40 hours, 50 hours.
So I needed
for
to
labor.
feed my husband.
So I was like, you know what? Let's have a good breakfast. I'm going to eat as much as I can.
I took a bath, and I got out of the bath, and it was very painful. And they were like, hey, your baby's coming. And I was like, but it's only been 3.5 hours. What do you mean my baby's coming? And then, so we go to deliver her. And there's no time for anything.
I can't tell anybody.
Nope. We are currently in labor, and it takes about 10 minutes and 3 pushes.
And then the next day, the midwife came back and visited with us. And we asked, like, well, that's kind of weird that the water didn't break. And the midwife said, well, actually, it's quite rare. It's called being born in caul. So ENCAUL is what it's called. And it's being born in the sac where the water doesn't break. She started saying that there's all kinds of like superstition around it and folklore around it, and she says that everybody commonly refers to it as a miracle birth. So I looked into it, and it's 1 in 80,000 that children are born in caul.
Believe it can happen. God answers prayers over and over and over again. We've got our miracle because of it. It's such a wonderful thing. He will show up in your life like He's showed up in our life. I believe it. It's just like through the grace of God, we've been given this beautiful child. So we thought that Grace was just the perfect name for her. This is little Grace. Yay. Hi.
Check this out, y'all. I mean, I was prophetic, right? She was born January 20th. This is her first Sunday at Harvest. Well, outside. Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she beautiful? One day, Lisa called me. She said, I just left the ladies' Bible study. I heard the most amazing testimony from Liz. You have to hear it. She started relaying what you just heard in a 5-minute video. And I'll just be honest, I have a lot of faith. But there's moments when I am just in awe at what God does. I was driving my truck and I just pulled over on the side of the road and I just sat there and I cried happy tears all by myself as Lisa told me this miracle story. The other day, Liz and Casey came in to film that video, and I think they've been at the church since 2016, and man, I just forgotten all the things that we've been through, which is, by the way, why we say we don't do life alone. All the prayers we've prayed, all the things we've all the celebrations and the not celebrations. There's some of those too. I mean, it's not all about being happy, but man, I cried when you videoed it. I cried when Tyler finished the video. I'm trying everything in me not to cry right now because I'm just in awe at what God can do. Why don't you stand with me? I'm going to ask you, just like I did on Easter 2022, I'm going to ask you to put your prayer request on one of these cards. They're not magical. They're just card stock that we buy on Amazon. But there is something miraculous that can happen when you determine that you'll take a faith step and trust the Lord with your prayer. What I'm going to do is take these. In fact, I'm getting on a plane this afternoon. I'm going to take these cards with me. And I'm going to go through them this week. I'm going to pray over every single one of them, every single one. I'll come home Wednesday and we'll pass them to our team, and our team will pray over every single one. And we're going to believe God. We're going to ask, seek, and knock with you. And I just cannot wait to see what God does. Are you excited to see what God does? All right. I'm going to ask you in a moment, Liz, I don't want to give her back, but can I give her back to y'all? She's so, oh my goodness. He said my voice puts her to sleep.
Used to hearing
it's similar to some of you. Our worship team is going to lead us in a final song, and as they do, and this it might get a little crowded, but I mean, I'm not going to make you do this, but I'd love for every single person to come. If you're a guest, man, you picked a great week to be here. Just jump in with us. Just become part of our family today. But I'd love for you to come, to just put it on the altar, and maybe you wrote something you don't want anyone to see. Just put it upside down. It's no big deal. And I'd love for you, and we'll have to help each other. I'd love for you to stay up here for a final prayer together, if that's all right. So worship team, why don't you help me? And let's sing a song. And would you take a moment and submit this to the Lord, and then when you're ready, come and lay it at the altar.